Hi. I have a really great film recommendation, and I'm going to discuss the film a little bit um, as briefly as I can for the sake of this episode. And then I'm going to kind of get on the soapbox a little bit first. So, I prefer to buy legal DVDs with digital copies and all that other wonderful stuff. Um, I like being able to watch DVDs my on my gently used iPod that I bought back when I was in college, um, because it's really handy if I'm ever bored out of my mind that I can simply pop in, pop my headphones on and watch a movie on this small device. Recently, my beloved and dear laptop, uh, you know, seemed to have crashed, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to repair it. So, when I bought a small netbook as a backup computer about a year ago, I transferred a lot of my media files to that machine. Uh, it was mine. I, owned the the licensing to the media files that were like digital downloads and digital copies of those kind of things, of movies and such. And I still have the cases and the DVDs of the films so that I can enjoy watching both the movie on DVD and on my computer. If I'm out and about and I'm waiting in a waiting room or something like that. So I bothered to buy the digital copies so that I could have that little luxury. I bothered to spend a little bit of extra money for the extra special feature DVDs and the digital downloads, the digital copies. But of course, my netbook, being a netbook, does not have a CD-ROM drive. Most netbooks do not have CD-ROM drives. So I can't play DVDs on it. I can't pop in the digital copy disc or whatever. But I still have the codes that say this is an authorized, legally purchased digital copy. So when I bothered to try and open it and watch it, what happens? But of course, a little window pops up saying, "Do you have permission from the copyright owner?" Now, there are some wonderful videos on YouTube that discuss copyright law and why some of it is pure poppycock, where a company that is not the creator of or author of the original work can own the copyright, can buy the copyright on something. For instance, a lot of the recent fairy tale and Disney similar things or spoofs are in fact inspired by the fact that the copyright on these stories has finally been expired. It's finally lapsed, and things like The Wizard of Oz or any of these kinds of stories are now somewhat more open to the public to interpret. Peter Pan is another good example, or Treasure Island. So you're able to kind of get the reins of corporations off of these stories and make your own interpretations of this. Now, in some ways that's good, and in some ways that's bad. In some ways it's good because you're able to see new interpretations of the stories, new elements of the characters brought out. In other ways it's bad because a lot of original material and stories are getting quashed by just basically recycling old plot lines and characters so many times that you just get sick of it, and it bears no resemblance to what it originally was. Uh, and I've made the joke in the past of if they were to take Pippi Longstocking and make a movie about her now, they'd want her to be some post-apocalyptic, heroine, lesbian freedom fighter in a future dystopia, rather than just a kid with magical abilities who, was able to do all kinds of fantastic things, that defied the grown-up sense of life in the very restrictive world of adult society. So, I mean, and that's almost what Pippi Longstocking is she's an anti-authority figure, but they would want to turn her into a spandex wearing, super heroine like Ultraviolet or Aeon Flux, or name a female heroine, and that's pretty much the same female heroine. Kill Bill, Underworld, Resident Evil, they all just kind of play off of one another with this archetype of the sexy female heroine who's battling untold numbers of hordes of bad guys, most of whom are just mindless drones of some sort. So, I mean, that being said, then when you get into the issue of the digital copy problem, where people are buying legal copies, and I bought like a legal copy of The Dark Knight, Hellboy, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Watchmen. I bought all these legal copies, brand new movies, not used copies, brand new. Star Trek. I bought all these legal copies so that I could have films that I could watch, when I was out and about. I could have digital copies to watch. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. To spend that little bit extra for that benefit. The first time I saw a digital copy of a movie was in like 2001, and I thought, well, this is the way movies are going to be watched from now on. It's so much simpler. You don't have to go to the theater, you don't have to buy a DVD, you just have a digital copy of the film in a very efficient, high quality format that reduces the size of the file from being something huge to something you can manage on a hard drive, or even on a jump drive now. And I was obviously not the first person to say that DVDs and CDs are a redundant medium. They've already gone into Blu-ray now, and even now Blu-ray is a redundant medium because they're so worried about piracy when the piracy is taking place because of their greed. They overprice these DVDs so much, and they overprice the film tickets so much because they want to make back some of the money that they went into producing the film and paying the actors and directors these high salaries, that then what you end up getting is not worth the material on the medium in which they give it to you. And it's even cheaper in a digital format because there's no actual substance to it. It's just ones and zeros. It's code that you download for playing in a program. It's just a program that runs on your computer. That's all it is. It's a programmed routine for the different pixels on your screen, just like this video is. So I mean, getting away from the computer science bit a little bit, Um, it it just strikes me as so bizarre that um, they would say, well, the code on this digital copy has is no good anymore, even though you're the legal owner of that copy of the movie, and you bought it in the store, it's yours. Um, they actually have this little asterisk above things where it's not actually yours. It's a copy that is licensed to you, almost leased to you for the cost of your purchase, so called, so that you can watch it as much as you want. You can have a friend watch it. You can uh, you can make copies for your own viewing, even. Uh, but you cannot sell it. You cannot make a profit on it, and that's where the people-to-people um, sharing networks and downloads have really kind of stepped forward and said, "Well, fine, you know, you guys will make your money back in the theaters and with your DVD sales, regardless. But there are these Chinese bootleggers and there are American bootleggers and Japanese bootleggers who are more than willing to upload, versions of the film, sneak those out and just upload them just to buck the system, just to mess with you, and really, in the end, with like this Avengers movie, I didn't see any stories about it being bootlegged or anything, but obviously it would have been by whoever, and it's just amazing that that film made more than enough in just gross domestic to pay for several sequels to Thor and Iron Man and all these other films, which again are just recycled characters. These are characters we've seen before. They've been in other media and have been developed for a long time. So they're simply relying on brand name recognition from the recycling. That being said, I wanted to talk about a film that actually was based on real life characters, was written over the course of a decade by a group of writers in Hollywood who, in the time that it took from conception to final draft to production, wrote, in my opinion, one of the best movies made in years. And it's not a new movie. If you've watched this series, you know that I am not big on recommending movies that are necessarily brand new. I'll discuss movies that are brand new and as to whether or not they're good or bad and give an honest review. But in this case, I'm giving a review of a film that is, approximately 20 years old. I think at least two of the actors are dead now that star in it. It has this all-star cast. It is so excellently made. And I'll just jump right in and say it. The film is called Sneakers, and it stars Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix, Sir Ben Kingsley. It has a cameo appearance at the end by James Earl Jones. Just stars this amazing host of actors and characters. And I bought a copy that's the collector's edition, so it has some extra features on it, running commentary throughout the film, a making of documentary, the trailer, all this wonderful stuff that tells you about it. The making of documentary is about 40 minutes long. It's well worth watching because they go into great detail before, at the start it's them 20 years later sort of talking about, or I guess it would be 15 years later, talking about how, the process went into writing this film. It has some of the best dialogue I've heard, where there isn't so much a repeat of things. The characters are different from beginning to end, but they have these driving forces within them. They have these character types. Personally, I think this film could have easily been adapted into a series of films, a television miniseries as a sequel, or even a television series. As long as it had a set run, so that it didn't get tired and they started having actors exit off the series. But I could have easily seen the River Phoenix character as sort of taking up the reins for Robert Redford's character, towards the end of the series, and that being kind of the sequel or the television series premise or the miniseries premise, where over the course of events, the Robert Redford character steps down, the River Phoenix character steps forward, and the fact that you have Ben Kingsley, River Phoenix, Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, and James Earl Jones all in the same film should give you enough reason to scream, "Why haven't I seen this movie before? What's it about? Tell me already." Okay, I'll tell you. You've probably seen in films before that there are characters, that there are not characters, that there are people who are professional thieves and hackers that test the security system. This was turned into a short-lived Fox comedy drama starring Christian Slater, among others, where there was some dramatic interplay. It was basically like Scrubs, only in a different context. I didn't care much for the soap opera drama about it, but I loved the plot premise where they're trying to test security systems by being paid to break into installations. And the film Sneakers is about a group of people like that, where they operate in sort of the backroom parts of things, where they are paid to test the security installations on bases and banks and government buildings, as well as corporate buildings, by breaking in for them and finding all of the cracks, so that it's even harder for for an honest thief, or I should say a dishonest thief, someone who is actually trying to break in, for them to find a crack or a gap, to get in and get what they want. So this was the first film of its kind to kind of go into that heist motif, where these people are professional thieves, but they're actually honest thieves. They don't actually steal. They have an arranged agreement with the person that they are trying to steal from, and it's actually beautifully, brilliantly done, I think. It's not a bad movie at all. Like I said, it has some of the best dialogue I've heard in any film of any genre. And the interplay between the different characters makes you feel like there are long-running relationships between these people. And these people had lives before this movie. They'll have lives after this movie. They are well-rounded, deep characters. They are an ensemble of characters who play well together, and the comedy more comes from those characters than is driven by necessarily, them just being stupid or something along those lines. Where these people are not stupid; they are highly, highly intelligent, and they have to think their way through things, and how they're able to think through things is where the humor comes from. The readiness with which they're able to come up with ideas, and how brilliant some of those ideas are, and how they're able to apply their insight. This is an intellectually driven film. These people are intelligent and well learned, and they respect and admire intelligence. They don't necessarily think that they're better or smarter than anyone. They aren't of the hacker mentality where they're trying to break the system through some sort of ego-driven thing where they have that power over the world. And all respect to hackers. If you're able to do it, then that's fine. I personally think that the Robert Redford character is actually an ideal of the good kind of hacker, and they actually show this at the beginning, where he and Ben Kingsley's character Cosmo are back in the 60s or 70s, using a computer to hack into different corporations and things that have monopolies on everything, and they are redirecting those funds that they get from the people into, and through, in some cases, illegal or unconscionable means. These companies are getting those funds, and they're sending those funds to organizations and companies that actually benefit humanity, like the United Nations Children's Fund, or I don't know, Amnesty International, or something wonderful like that, where you have these really great organizations that are always scrounging for funds and having a hard time and having to rely on charitable donations. Well, why don't these companies just give up their vast fortunes and actually do some wonderful good for the world? Well, that's where Robert Redford's character and Ben Kingsley's character come in, where you're introduced to these characters, and in the making of documentary, Ben Kingsley analyzes the character and says that his motivation is that he is essentially without emotion. He is a very cold, calculating, brilliant, bright character who does want to do good for humanity. But he is willing to compromise a lot of morals in order to do that. Whereas Robert Redford is not. He is not willing to see people hurt. He's not willing to see criminals actually do that. He will not cross the line into crime. He will work with people who want to do better than they have been, and reform themselves, essentially. People who are making atonement is essentially the idea. And so there is a love interest. The plot follows a somewhat formulaic thing, with some of the twists and turns at the beginning of the story, stuff you will have seen here and there before in some other stories, but that's partially because these writers were working on other films throughout the 80s at the time. But I will say that these particular twists and turns are a little bit more subtly played. The characters are a little bit more rounded, like I said before, so it works out a lot better in terms of how they play together. There aren't any real special effects, but the storytelling is well executed if you look at it. There's a great deal of comedy, a great deal of of endearingness to each of the characters. And I think if you watch this and really look into the different characters as they're going along, you will find that you can understand the motivations of the bad guys as much as the good guys. There's not this line of, oh, I'm good and I'm bad, and here's my side and that's your side, and my side is all about me and your side is all about, not hurting anyone and or protecting people or something, and my side's all about power and everything. It's played a little bit more in what I would call the sort of rabbinical Torah kind of context to morality, where there are fine lines, and you can be doing a great thing, but the means by which you're doing it is not conscionable, or you can be going in with really great methods and intentions and not coming to the result you think you were because you were misled as to who was going to benefit by your actions. And there are lots of different situations like this just in this film. So I really loved it. I first watched it years and years ago, and they were having a great sale on DVDs at the shop near where I live. So I was just like, okay, I'll spend a few bucks. I'll get some movies that I've really thought about getting copies of. They're extra special editions. So that was one that I absolutely said to myself, this is one I will get. It's a fun, exciting film with lots of twists and turns, lots of great characters, people you can identify with, or people you can say, man, I wish I knew someone like that, and people where you can understand their motivations. And that's why I recommend this movie so highly. It is actually better, in my opinion, than The Illusionist or Equilibrium or other films that I've seen where I've really liked it, because the pleasure you get from watching it isn't just from the plot, and it isn't just from the characters. There is so much more to the story than just what's on screen, and the lines, when they're delivered, have this subtlety and this emotional content that you don't get just from a lot of regular stories. And so I think that's just important when you're watching these films, because it's a film about working with the system and bucking the system. It's a film about trying to do things the honest, legal way and still getting the shaft from doing things the right way. But in some ways it's still better than the alternative where you have to cross certain lines that are damaging to your soul. And in this case, the character of Cosmo does seem to have some damages done to his soul. But that's foreshadowing a little bit of a very important plot twist. I don't want to ruin it for you. So go check out Sneakers, starring Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, Ben Kingsley, James Earl Jones, River Phoenix, and Dan Aykroyd, and just this amazing cast. I think you'll really get a kick out of it. Bye-bye.